Hey everyone, I am the TheChosenOneLegend here, as always joined by my co-host,
Hi, I'm Kai, also known as Fascurreyn.
and once again joined by our graphic designer, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey, I am Sam, as you may remember me from trying, which was actually a little while ago now, damn.
Which means we're on to Kai's now.
Yes.
Alright.
I am scared.
Sam, is there one you'd prefer for me to do first, or...?
It's actually my favourite out of all 5 of them. I'd prefer if you did the ground type first.
The ground type, okay. I have notes for the other one, so let me get those. Okay, alright. So, my first pick was kind of a... it's a fan favourite Pokemon, and I think that although I didn't want to do too many of those, that's exactly what I ended up choosing. And I feel like this would be one to really sort of draw in the fans just before the release. And this is a concept for Gengar. Now,
Right.
Gengar, of course, is a very popular Pokemon, one of the most popular, and it is in my form, a ground and ghost type. So normally it's a ghost poison type, but I imagine in this region, Sam would probably go into details with the lore, but I'd imagine that rather than being a poison type haunting people maliciously, like it does normally, that sort of thing, I imagine it sort of haunts the ground, especially at, I believe it's Mount Coronet, the big mountain in the middle of the region.
Right.
I imagine that on the path up that mountain, there are Gengar that kind of haunt the ground and pop up to frighten or attack people, like Gengar does. So that's the general idea. Its body, rather than being quite solid, it would be a little bit closer to, sort of being fragmented, kind of fractured because it's in rocks, rather than being a whole being. I suppose it could technically be a rock ghost type, but I thought ground would be better because ground is technically what it would be haunting, rather than just, the air. So that's the general idea.
Alrighty.
Nice. What did you do to that, Sam?
I did another sad thing.
Oh no.
So
Misery, yeah.
No. It actually ties in because essentially both of you didn't give me too much in terms of backstory to work off of. You gave me a lot on general sort of design features, that sort of thing, and then I sort of molded it around it. But what Kai has said is actually tied in pretty well to what I've got here. So I will start with this kind of sad story. And I didn't realize when I was writing it, but it sort of has parallels to Ash's Gengar in the anime currently, the one that was abandoned. So essentially, this form of Gengar has adapted to the open fields, so the environment, and its mortal foe, which I wanted to choose a better one, but unfortunately, because I tried to pick Pokemon that are confirmed to be in the game, Magneton. This is Gengar's mortal foe now. You will see why.
Okay.
It's like the new Cloud and Sephiroth, yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, after the Haunter evolved into Gengar, it became a ritual for trainers to abandon their newly evolved Pokemon due to the fear and stigma around the ghosts of the time. For this reason, Gengar weren't allowed in towns or near camps. Without any infrastructure for this Pokemon to hide in, it was very much open to attack. The Gengar were able to defend themselves relatively well. However, the Pokemon that had one great enemy, the Steel Electric type, Magneton. Now, essentially, it's Steel type, so it can't be poisoned. And I've just decided to ignore the ghostliness of Gengar for a minute. So essentially, with Magneton's sort of power to fly a little more freely than what Gengar can, it's very much easy to attack Gengar and then flee, and Gengar can't really do much. He can sort of shoot some sort of Shadow Ball or whatever it is at Magneton, but it just gets away too fast. So essentially, due to the Gengar's no choice, it couldn't do much above the ground, it decided to stay below ground. Now, and this is sort of where this transformation starts. Due to the Gengar's extended period of time in hiding and grieving the loss of its trainer in the ground, instead of poisoning the earth, it adapted to its new home. It began to move moves such as Dig and Earthquake to protect themselves from the surrounding humans nearby, because they hate the humans for abandoning them. Thus, it began to become one with the earth and slowly re-emerged over time as the new Hisuian Gengar. Now, when I designed this one, I sort of came up with the concept very quickly, became very set in my ways, and I would not change it.
I'm looking forward to this.
So in terms of what Kai's given me to work with, it's not as, I think, fragmented as what he originally imagined, but essentially I ended up with a concept that looked a little like this.
Oh wow.
Ooh.
Reminds me of Sandy Gas.
So essentially what I decided is the Gengar spent so much time in the ground, it couldn't really come out. It can get further and further out if it really tried to, but this is just the general sort of design of the Pokemon. Its body does move quite a lot. So like in terms of its general form, it will sort of flow very freely because of its ghost type and haunting the earth. But essentially, to further elaborate on the story, because this Pokemon accepted its new home, learned its new moves, after slowly emerging from the ground, it became engulfed in sand and dirt, and it couldn't do much about it, and it just sort of got stuck with them. So this Pokemon now spends its time healing the earth instead of using its previous poisonous abilities, and protecting the surrounding Pokemon of the area. So what I sort of used as a headcanon was, I remember Cleaver is a noble Pokemon, and it's basically acts like the gym system. I almost imagine this Pokemon would possess the type of power to be one of those. So essentially it protects the Pokemon in the nearby area from the humans by terraforming very quickly the earth around it, to basically create its own environment and ecosystem to protect the rest of these Pokemon. But now when the Gengar come against the Magneton, because they're in the ground, they actually, this touches on their ability a bit, but when it moves that ground type, so Dig, Earthquake, that sort of stuff, rock type as well, why not, it gets first priority because it moves that fast in the ground. So essentially it can move that fast that it can attack the Magneton without almost being detected, and because it doesn't have its poison type anymore, it can actually affect the Pokemon. Whether or not this Pokemon is still alive today is a mystery, because it's not been seen in hundreds of years. However, it still could be beneath the ground. So whether this Pokemon is now hiding from the humans because there's so many of them everywhere is unknown.
Can I just say that I love its expression of resigned spite. It's like me scrolling through Twitter. It's relatable. So
the way I look at it is just, it's so completely another defeated, but it can't do anything.
Yeah.
And its hands just say everything because they're just actually rocks. They don't serve much of a purpose. They sort of move and flail around a bit like wands. But that's the way I looked at it. Oh, but yes, alrighty. That is
I can imagine it
Gengar.
having like, I can imagine it having like maybe a special move. Just looking at your design, some kind of like a unique move that it has, something to do with changing the ground around it, like you say. Maybe it will like alter stats for certain Pokemon types or something like that. But I can definitely imagine that happening really good.
it kind of reminds me of like the sort of aesthetic of, in like the original Spider-Man films, of Sandman sort of broken out from the ground but sort of distorted. But it looks really interesting. I like how it sort of it's still got that sort of recognisable look, but it almost has that sort of body horror kind of look to it in the ground of how it's defeated, and it's kind of sad but interesting. So
yeah, I did try to keep sort of what makes Gengar being it's entirely round body and then tiny little limbs, and then obviously it's two very pointy ears. But essentially, I just sort of decayed them a bit. That's sort of what the thinking was, and then obviously the little lump of sand on its head is just it appears when it shows up out of the ground.
Yeah.
But
yeah, very interesting. What is your second one then, Kai? The final main one.
So my next one is yet another sort of almost signature Pokemon.
If I don't have to Google it, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I noticed though you did an ice type earlier, and I like that because I feel like I believe ice types are the least common type of all typings, even less so than fairy type, which are only introduced recently. And I was like thinking, well, this is a Hisui region. It's very snowy in a lot of areas. We need some ice types. So the one I ended up going on is Luxray as an electric ice type.
Ooh.
So normally Luxray is just an electric type, very strong. So I imagine in this version, Luxray maybe hangs out in the north west part of the region, I believe it is, where there's a lot of snow and it kind of looks like there's some ruins. So I believe that Luxray perhaps could be like a sort of almost a mystical Pokemon. Its Pokedex entries talk about it having quite good eyesight, I think it is, where it can like see Pokemon through walls and that sort of thing, and it hunts its prey. So I can imagine either there or on Mount Coronet, Luxray sort of loom around. Of course, we know that this isn't actually going to be a Pokemon because we've seen in the trailers that you have the wild Luxrays that don't have any special form. But I could imagine that rather than that, they did have sort of sacred electric ice type Luxrays that were enraged and were a threat, and I feel like that would fit better in the region than regular Luxray does. So that's the general idea of things there.
Yeah, sounds good. What did you do to that then, Sam?
Well, it's funny that he mentioned a few of those points because, well, I went through the Pokedex myself as well, and basically everything that Kai sort of touched on is something that I've incorporated to the design or its behavior.
Oh, brilliant.
Coincidentally, I'm not psychic, so essentially what I've done with this Pokemon is I've turned it a little more feral to try and be a little more opposite to what it's normally like.
Yeah, I like that. Like vicious, wild sort of thing.
Essentially, well, from what I've seen in a few, well, when it's in the anime, this Pokemon is quite caring. It cares for its trainer, it cares for its young. So essentially, I did the opposite here. And this Pokemon is quite drastic from its normal form, so I'll get started on this one. In the Hisui region, we see the original form of Luxray, which is suited to the cold environments and the mountainous terrain. Luxray behavior in the Hisui region is quite drastic from its modern-day counterpart. It tends to live alone in the mountains of the region and sometimes hides in caves or on cliff sides to ensure that it is always alone. Even when Luxrays have newborn Shinxes, not sure how to say that one. They will abandon their young to teach them how to live in this harsh environment. Their offspring will almost always find their way back to their Luxray with its enhanced vision and ability to see through the terrain. However, they do not share an emotional connection with each other. Oh, they do not share. That's the end of the sentence. That's me being dyslexic. Upon evolving into Hisuian Luxio, which I have not drawn anything for, I am sorry, this Pokemon will leave its parent to go off in search of its own habitat to call its home. Okay, so I will show off the design now. So obviously the design, I wanted to do more with it, but it's quite generic in terms of it's an ice electric type. But I wanted to focus more on its behavior and ability here because I've done it for the rest of them, and I was quite tired of designing by this point. So essentially what I've done is I drew this concept before Hisuian Zoroark was revealed, but it sort of does share some parallels in terms of its almost free-flowing hair and body, where Zoroark has that sort of, I want to say, ribbons around it. I'm not sure what to call them.
Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, so Hisuian Luxray does have that same sort of vibe to it. But what I more so wanted to touch on was how strong and how powerful it becomes once it reaches that stage of evolving into a Luxray. It gets to a point where it can sort of block out everything, that it will not feel the cold around it. Hence why it does not need as much fur or coating as like Hisuian Bidoof does. So it's still got a very similar form to what we see in normal Luxray. But yeah, so then continuing on with its sort of story, it is said that very few Pokemon are born, or a few of this Pokemon, that are born manage to evolve into Hisuian Luxray. This being because if the Shinx does not make it back to its parent, it will wander around the new environment and it will always end up settling elsewhere in the region. It does not stay in the cold mountains because it does not have the body to survive. These Shinxes, which I found interesting that you mentioned, we see normal Luxray already, because I've mentioned it here.
Yeah.
The Shinxes that do not make it back to its parents evolve into said normal Luxray.
That makes sense.
So
yeah,
that's what I sort of wrote there. Obviously, there'd be two of the same Pokemon in the one region, which slightly upsets me. But to try and make it as realistic as possible, given what we've seen already.
You've explained it. It's good.
Yeah.
In a way that would fit perfectly into the lore of the region and that. Yeah, that's a really interesting way of putting it.
Yeah, and then as the client warmed up and the Pokemon was forced out of its places of hiding, they slowly became extinct due to their stubbornness to adapt. Hence this form of Luxray that we see outside of the mountainous regions are the ones that we know today, because the ones that were in said mountainous regions would not leave. And then obviously they may have been hurt. So that is the story I came up with there.
Yeah. I do like how... Yeah, I like how so many of these Pokemon like to hide and reclusive, because I just relate to that on a personal level. Fellow shut-ins. But yeah. That's really...
I gave you like... when I gave Sam the notes for this Pokemon, I gave literally 0 notes in terms of the lore behind it, so the fact that he had such similar ideas is crazy. Like, all I told him was like, slightly thicker fur and white, and that's it. I'm pretty sure that's all I said. So
I think that is true. There's literally nothing else that you gave me to work off of there. But
same idea in the end, though.
Yeah. This next one is possibly a few people that we know will sort of love it.
I feel like I might know where you're going with this now.
So there's one person in particular who will love it, but I will let Kai start us off here.
Okay, so I've done 2 very popular Pokemon, but I didn't want to do a third, but you know, we've got to do the best Pokemon out there, right?
Oh god.
One that may even top Bidoof. A new one from Galar, but perhaps it has more godly origins in a different region.
Who could this be?
I introduce to you Hisuian Dottler,
yeah,
known as Brug. So this form of Dottler, again, I think Sam's got some more lore for this, but the general idea is that this version of Dottler isn't, you know, a low stats, low power Pokemon. In this region, it's basically, I don't know, let's say it's basically a pseudo-legendary. At this point, it's a bug dragon type rather than a bug psychic type. Doesn't I'd say maybe it doesn't evolve into Orbeetle, you know, that just doesn't happen at level 30. But
it's funny you say that.
Is just... Oh no.
Oh no.
So this version of Brug is just all powerful. You know, in terms of its features, Sam's got the image, but I imagine it's just got like a much bigger presence to it. You know, maybe it's got like stuff that makes it more dragon-like. You know, we're thinking like breathing fire, wings, scales, something along those lines.
Yeah.
But just essentially, it encapsulates all that is power, with Hisuian Brug being a bug dragon type.
It's like Bidoof is like, finally, a worthy opponent. Our battle shall be legendary.
If Legends Arceus had like 2 games and you needed box legendaries, there you go.
Oh, that's incredible. For any reference, if you're wondering where this sort of memed Dottler comes from, visit Samm_Twitches on Twitch. I'll put a link in the description below, but yeah, just have a good time there. But man, so for this one, if I correct Sam, there's going to be an image in the final video, but it's not ready yet. Is that right?
Yes, well, the concept that I came up with, I think is probably going to be the hardest to draw out of all of them. Because
I'm so godly.
You're not wrong. I kept its form pretty similar to the normal sort of Dottler that we see, but I will sort of explain that in the story. Now, I took a very memey approach because I saw as soon as Kai put Bug Dragon on there, I knew it was a piss take. And I knew it was just directed at a certain someone we know. So I've literally only got like
the
4
thinking,
sentences.
by the way, is that Dragon is like the strongest. That's like the strongest type, basically.
Yeah.
In terms of the Pokemon that have the typing, they're always the strongest. So that's the idea behind that.
Alrighty. So what I've got here, it's quite an interesting one, and I think I've done it justice. From where I stand, at least. So in the Hisui region, this Pokemon lives in large groups in caves similar to bats, not by its own choice. So essentially, due to its immense power, the humans sealed it away so it could never evolve further. So it never got to Orbeetle because it was already too powerful.
True.
Little is known about this Pokemon other than its love for other Dottler. Its hate and its hatred for everything else. So only it basically, unless you're another Dottler, you're not going to survive. Despite being sealed away, the Dottlers still survived in the cave until hundreds and hundreds of years later. After all this time, the Dottlers fell into a slumber and developed psychic telecommunication with each other. After being let out, the Dottlers tried to attack the humans, however the Dragon type was gone and was replaced with the Psychic type that they used to communicate with each other. So, by stripping away its Dragon type, it basically lost all its power. So now I will show the concept that I have come up with.
So you either die a dragon or live long enough to see yourself become the psychic type, is what you're saying.
Yeah, basically. There's not much else to say to it.
Oh, that's brilliant. The 6 wings.
It's like sort of the biblically accurate versions of angels people talk about, you know. It's
literally, it actually is. That's so good.
Yeah, I love it.
So that's, I'm not calling it Hisuian Dottler, I'm calling it, just, well, there's 2 names we can use. Primal
I think I know
Dottler,
one of them.
or just Brug.
Yeah.
This is true Brug.
Oh,
it's the best one.
I don't think we can top that, so it's good to be ending with that one because we've peaked. But yeah. Have you got anything else to say, Sam? Or
no, I just don't know why I brought this abomination into the world. I know that
too powerful for you to kick it out.
Yeah, I I think that I'm about to become a... What are they called? The professor from the Powerpuff Girls, where he accidentally made possibly the most powerful being in the world.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You didn't stop to think whether or not you should, because you were so focused on whether or not you could. It's classic Jurassic Park syndrome.
Yeah, it's something. I also like to think that this Pokemon is 10 times its normal size. And that it just sort of shrunk over time due to dehydration.
I can imagine it being a post-game boss, like legitimately.
Yeah.
I think it could.
Well, the way
you two eat your heart out. This is
what I almost think of is when Kai wrote his episode for Game of Phones, and he had the Mecha Brug that was like supposedly taller than me, which Kai wrote a bit of a line about. So that's sort of almost what I imagined as well while doing this. But yeah.
Yeah, so on that note, that brings us to the end of this video. It has been a roller coaster, but first of all, thank you so much, Sam, for creating all of these beautiful artworks, especially Brug, but the whole game. So thank you, Sam.
The one and only Brug now. The other Brug doesn't exist.
Nope.
This is Brug's
true form.
Every other Brug is just a Dottler now.
And of course, thank you to Kai for always being my co-host. Where can people find you at?
They can find me at twitch.tv/Fascurreyn. We're almost done with Great Ace Attorney now.
Making your way through. And and just thank you all for watching. I'll put links to those and to Sam's Twitter in the description below. But that is it till the next time. So thank you for watching. If you did enjoy this, please say so. Please give us your own ideas for what you would have liked to see. And we might do another one of these videos in the future for the next gen, maybe. We'll see what you guys think of it. But thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Take care.
Bye.